Thank you for joining us for today's webinar entitled 15 Emails in 15 Minutes, a Crash Course in B2B Email Creative, hosted by AutoPilot and Sparrow Marketing Group. We'll race through 15 real-life examples of B2B email campaigns while identifying the good, the bad, and the really actionable. You'll learn the 3 things an email recipient needs to see immediately, why you should avoid yes/no questions, and the critical error that dooms most B2B emails in the first paragraph. At the end, we'll show you a live demonstration of how easy it is to automate drip email nurture journeys that drive insane engagement as well. Feel free to ask questions anytime during the presentation. We'll be moderating questions throughout the session, both in GoToWebinar control panel and on Twitter. So again, just tweet at us and we'll respond. The hashtag for the webinar is hashtag B2B email. And if your question is not answered today, someone will follow up with you after the webinar. This session is being recorded and will be sent to you following the presentation for your own purposes or to share with others. So just a quick introduction. Howard is the president of Sparrow Marketing Group, a leading B2B demand generation company, and I am the evangelist for AutoPilot. So I just want to give Howard an opportunity to introduce himself.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks for having me today. Not much to add, really. I've been in B2B marketing for more than 25 years, ever since you were in grade school, probably. In other words, I started on the client side, working for Oracle, worked there for a few years, and have been in the agency business ever since. And I love what I do. It's always changing, right? So happy to be here.
Boom. Let's go ahead and get started.
I'm going to inflict a short description of Sparrow. I'll make this quick and painless for everyone, just for context, so you know who we are. So as Josh says, we're a full-service B2B agency. For anyone in the audience that's worked with an agency, we're a classic agency model. But we're kind of specialized in 2 ways primarily. One is that 90+% of our clients are B2B technology companies. So that's really kind of where we focus in terms of market. And then the second way is the work we do. And we're very much a demand generation agency. About half the work we do is what these days you would call top of the funnel lead generation. So anything and everything that generates a lead, we do. And then the other half of the work is what we term lead management, which we think of as once the lead's in the door, how do we help our clients nurture, cultivate, convert that lead to where ultimately it becomes a customer. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our clients are all over the map, though, about 30% Silicon Valley and the rest all across the country and global. And we've been named one of the top B2B agencies in the country the last 3 years, which we're very proud of. And we're also a proud AutoPilot partner. So I had to mention that. So that's us.
Boom, I love it. So I'm just jumping into what AutoPilot is. AutoPilot is a visual marketing software for automating customer journeys. We work a lot with B2B companies, and that's one of the reasons we work with Howard. And we've worked with a number of companies that help set up their journeys and make sure that they're on AutoPilot. So just a heads up, before we jump into the material, I want you guys to know that we will be answering your questions at the end of the webinar. So if you want to stay through to get your questions answered, make sure you're on the whole time. So let's go ahead and get started. So 15 emails in 50 minutes. Let's go.
So these are, Josh, these are just some basic principles that you're going to hear, that people are going to hear throughout the webinar. And so I want to summarize these up front. First, there are 3 things that your reader needs to know almost immediately upon starting to read the email. And those are what the offer is, why it's important, i.e. why you want it, and how to get it, right? Secondly, sell the offer, not the product. It's the offer, whether that's a white paper or a webinar or a demo, whatever it is, that you need to convince the reader he or she wants. So that's what your emails should focus on. Shorter emails are generally better, especially in these days when most people are reading them on mobile devices. Longer copy can work, but the most important thing is to avoid redundancy. So every word of copy in your email needs to be working for you, and more specifically, driving action. Next point, focus. So focus on one offer, one message, one call to action. Anything more than that is a distraction, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that when we get into the campaigns. And lastly, don't just tell me stuff. Okay, a successful email drives engagement. It gets the reader to do something. So the copy should always be driving action. So those are just some key principles. Before we move to the next slide, Josh, I just want to say a couple of things before we go into the examples. One is our agency didn't create any of these, and I feel the need to say that. I just want you to know up front in case you're expecting me to kind of wax lyrical about one or two and then, oh, what a surprise, we did the work. These are all literally emails that just, ended up in my inbox. Secondly, this is a webinar about creative. It is not a webinar about things like deliverability or blacklists or spam traps and other kind of more technical issues. That's not to say those topics aren't important, but that's a different webinar and not the kind of thing that we'll be covering today. And lastly, if any of these examples are from your company, I just want to apologize in advance and assure you that it's nothing personal. This is all business. So with that said, shall we forge ahead?
Boom, let's do it.
Okay. All right, here we go. So it's a company called Insight Pool. Pretty good looking email. It's visually engaging. It's not too text heavy, which is a good thing. It uses pre-header copy. So pre-header copy is that tiny line of copy there at the top to the left of the logo. The reason pre-header copy is a good idea is it's typically the first thing people will see on a mobile device, so it's a good thing to have it there. Unfortunately, the pre-header copy here isn't that great. It says, and I know it's almost impossible to read on the slide, it says 51% of marketers believe they get better customers from influencer marketing. So it's basically the same as the headline. And the problem with that is it's just kind of stating a fact. It's not really telling me why I should read the email. The header, the blue banner, is it's attractive, it's engaging. The issue is that it's just one big image, including the headline, as opposed to using HTML text. And this is something we'll talk about with a couple of these campaigns. And I recognize the trade-off, and the designers in the audience are saying, yes, but if you use HTML, you can't control the way that font and that text looks in someone's email client. And I recognize that. But if you use text as part of the image, as Insight Pool has done here, the problem is if the reader has his or her images turned off in the email client, then none of that will be visible, including the headline. So, and I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. But by far the biggest issue with this email, there's literally no offer. I literally have no idea what I'm being offered. Is it a download? Is it a white paper? Is it an article? I just have no clue. And then the button copy, read more. Read more of what? You need to be specific. So I just have no idea what that's referencing. And if you can move to the next slide, Josh, if you wouldn't mind. So this is what the same email looks like if you have images turned off. Now, images turned off is less of an issue than it used to be. Gmail, for example, recently started showing images automatically, but there's still a whole bunch of people that won't see images or have elected not to show images in their email. And so this is always something you need to be, your header can be gorgeous, as this one is here, but if images are off, no one will see it. And this comes into play also when we talk about buttons, because those are also basically invisible. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Timetre, this is another email that looks really good, I think, at first impression, until you try to understand what on earth it is they want you to do. The headline there says qualities of top sales organizations and the tools to become one. And then underneath that, essential steps and tips that will help convert first-time prospects into new clients. And that all sounds great. But then the image in the header, again, I don't know what it is. I think it might be an ebook. It says what salespeople can learn from classic songs. And again, it sounds, I've no idea if that's the same thing as is being referenced in the headline. So I'm really confused at this point. I just have no idea what the offer is. The body copy really doesn't help. There are no offer benefits, i.e. reasons why I'd want whatever it is that they're offering. And lastly, there are 3 different calls to action in this email. So if you, at the top right-hand corner there's a schedule a demo, and then the download button. And then, by the way, do you know what you're downloading? Because I don't. And then if you count the social share buttons, oh, there's a schedule a time to talk text link in the body copy, and then the social buttons at the end. So that's really 4. And that's just generally a bad idea. I know the inclination is to try and cover all bases and give people different options, but all you're doing really is distracting the reader. You really want to focus on one message, one offer, one call to action. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Bounce Exchange, I like this one, believe it or not. Not because it's the best looking email in the world, because it's not, but look at what they've managed to include in a very short email. You know immediately what the offer is, right? It's a marketer's guide to Facebook advertising. The email describes very precisely why it's of value, and there's a download button front and center. So remember when I talked about what, why, how, all of that is covered. There's an image of the offer there on the left, which is a great best practice. And it's not just a thumbnail of the cover. It's something that looks like a book, even though, you know, you and I know that's probably not what you're actually going to download. And then the 3 bullets tell you what you will learn in the book. So it's selling the offer, not the product. In fact, it's kind of difficult to figure out what Bounce Exchange does, and that's okay, because what we're selling is the information. It's the information that we want people to download. I even like that last button, unlock the guide. You know, it's action oriented. It reinforces what the offer is, and the whole email is 53 words, which I think is, you know, pretty amazing. All right, next one. So our friends at IBM, so they've done a few things right here. The offer is right up front. It's a webinar, first thing you read. You know when it is, how to register, that's all good. The headline is, unfortunately, all an image, which we've already talked about. The body copy is where things really start to fall apart here. There's this incredibly long, what I call a setup paragraph, starting with the words, you know, which is a kiss of death, because if you're telling me something I already know, I really don't need to read your email, do I? So there's just way too much text here, and it's not broken up in a way that either makes it scannable or to highlight key points with like bullets or anything. And so when this shows up in your email, in your preview pane, or on your phone, you know, all you see is a bunch of text, and that's just, yeah, no thanks. So there are also no text links in the body copy, right? So there's no hyperlinks in the body copy. And again, that's something you should always have in addition to buttons, because again, if the reader has images turned off and all the buttons disappear, there's no way to respond. So too much text, need more text links. So, okay, next. Okay, Localytics. Again, the headline's part of the image, but the bigger issue here is the header is really large. I mean, it's visually engaging, but basically what it ends up doing is just pushing this spelling copy down the page, which is really going to be an issue, especially on like a smartphone. The body copy reads as follows. Did you know that effective push notifications can improve monthly sessions by over 50%? Now, I'm going to suggest to you that it's generally a really bad idea to open an email with a yes/no question like this. And why is that? Because as the reader, if I answer yes to this question, like, yes, I do know that, that's it, I'm done, right? So the solution is just state whatever it is you're asking as a benefit. So something like, you know, discover a simple way to improve monthly sessions by over 50%. Okay, now you've got my attention. The one thing I do like about this email is the button copy. So the first there says get it now, and the second says grab your copy. And you know, not every button needs to say, you know, download or register now or whatever. So, you know, I would say, you know, get creative and just always make button copy action oriented, right? And as specific as possible, so people know what's going to happen when they click on that button. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Acquia. So I like that they identify the offer up front. It's a Gartner report. The headline reads like a topic and not a benefit. And I know that's, again, a quibble, but there's nothing in that headline that inherently sells the value of the information or says it what's in it for me. This is what happens when you try and get through as much material in 15 minutes. So I'd love to see some image of the offer here. I know you might think that's old-fashioned, but really including an offer image, something that says, you know, here's what the report looks like, it just makes that offer much more real and tangible. There's another setup paragraph here, but in this case, it's really short. It's only 2 sentences, and then the email's right into selling the offer, which is great. And you notice that the, as in contrast to the IBM one we looked at a couple of minutes ago, the benefits of the offer are bulleted, so they're easy to scan and read. And lastly, there are 2 button calls to action, one in the header, one at the end, get your report, and there's 1 text link in the body copy, read Gartner's latest report. So that's all good. So overall, a really nice job. And the only problem is, unfortunately, that there's this major design flaw, and the footer there is designed I'm assuming what must be a fixed width, and so of course it's much wider than the body. So that's unfortunate. But otherwise, this is a good email. So, all right, let's go to the next one. I'll try not to choke this time. Here we go. So Localytics, here our friends again. So I hope they're not on the phone because they'll feel like they're being picked on. This is a great headline, a recipe for mobile app success. It immediately communicates a benefit, right? You know what you're going to get from this. Both the offer and the call to action are front and center. I love how they show kind of a couple of different images of the offer. I love the starburst here, $500 value. And I'm not suggesting it takes me back to my early days in marketing, but I'm not suggesting that you use starburst, but it's selling the offer. It's telling you that there's a value here, and I think that's great. Here again, you've got an opening paragraph though that's just way too long, and it's basically a recitation of facts. The next line after the setup paragraph reads, "This report covers how to." Now that would be much better if it said something like, "In this report, you'll learn." So you always want to make it about the reader and not so much, you and the offer. And lastly, remember when I talked about redundancy? So here's this copy right above the final button, and it says the right users. What does it say? The right users plus the right metrics equals a recipe every brand can follow. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really know what that means, but you clearly don't need it because it's not selling the offer, it's not driving action. So I would just remove that entirely. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Josh. So this is Lookbook. This is a really interesting email in many ways, but it's kind of a mixed bag creatively. I really like the header. All the text is in image, but otherwise it's really a very creative use of space. The headline delivers a benefit, 7 things you need to know. I like the button copy, save my seat, nice and creative. And the laptop image, which really, when you think about it, is an image of the offer, right? And it's kind of what you'll be seeing. The speaker photos make the event more real. You'll notice the little, I don't know if you can see it, but the little 20 minutes call out there on the corner, which is great. And again, it's selling the offer by reinforcing that the webinar won't take up too much of your time. But the body copy, holy smokes, this is where, again, things seem to come apart. So first of all, white type on a gray background, never a good idea. The opening paragraph's just way too long. And the whole body copy section is just super busy. There's just too many bullets. The bullets are too long. The text is too small. It's just a massive text and just not easy to read. This is one of those emails that I think look probably really good as a comp, and just not great when in action. So, all right, let's go to the next one. Web route. Okay, sorry, this is just a really bad, it's just a really horrible email. Gosh, where do I start? Neither the headline nor the subhead really make a lot of sense to me. There's just no relevance to any kind of value proposition or anything that's of much interest to me, the reader, or about the offer. The body copy starts with a yes/no question. Do long scan times, big downloads, and slow performance make your users less productive? Yes, they do. Okay, I'm done. And it kind of goes downhill from there. It's just most of the copy is about features. You notice there's a free 30-day trial, but they're not really selling the trial or describing what that's about. This is really a product brochure posing as an email. It's as simple as that to be tough about it. Okay, let's go to the next one. IBM again. So I like the fact that the header is nice and short, but boy, it's kind of boring, don't you think? I mean, there's no visuals to grab the reader. The headline's a topic and not a benefit, again. And there's no call to action in that header. So, I mean, it would be really easy to add just a little button or something up there. It says, register now or something. And then the body copy is 3 long paragraphs of facts. It's just telling me stuff, and none of that is really driving the value of the event or why I should register. I literally have to wait till the very end of the email, that pink button at the end, to be able to register. And that's just never a good idea. This would literally be a much more effective email if you took those 3 paragraphs of body copy and just took them out and just had, join the webinar to learn about your bullets, speaker photos, boom, you're done. I just think it'd be much more efficient. Okay, next. Blue Wolf. So this is another one of those emails that, I don't know, I just think it's trying to look pretty or maybe hip. I'm not sure. I don't get this header image. Can you figure out what this is, Josh? Because it took me a couple of days to figure out what that black and white image.
I can't figure it out.
No, it's a head. It's a woman's head. It's like a hair bun, or maybe it's a man bun. I don't know. But anyway, it took me a long time to figure out what that was. So anyway, that's just confusing to me. And I don't know what the offer is. Oh, wait a minute. There's this tiny little line of text at the top that says live webcast. And then a typo. So that's not good. And then there's a salutation, and that's something we should talk about. And it's when email marketing first kind of took storm, and I was there. It was kind of a carry on from direct mail days, and everyone kind of started emails with salutations. And I don't, these days, I don't know that it really accomplishes much, except to, push the selling copy down the page. I mean, no one thinks this is a personal email. So I would say, you don't really need it. You also don't need copy that ever uses the phrase now more than ever, because that's just a real cliche. Now, remember I talked earlier about always making it about the reader. So here's another example. The copy reads, "We're bringing you a live in-depth webcast," when what it really should say is, join a live in-depth webcast. And then that text should be a live text link to the registration page. So, try and avoid the first person, I, we, etc. And always make your copy action oriented whenever possible. And then that last button says click to register. And, folks, it's 2017. You don't need to explain to me that I need to click on something. So I just say register now or something like it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Sales Hacker. So a couple of good things right off the bat. So great pre-header copy. It reads, learn the best hacks and techniques for meeting your Q4 goals during this virtual event. So great. Hey, I know what the offer is. I know why it's important, etc. So that's all good. The header's great also. It tells me what the offer is, what the benefit is to the reader. It says how to register. And again, unfortunately from there, the body copy just really lets the email down. The first paragraph tells me stuff I already know. It starts with the end of Q4 in the 2016 calendar year is rapidly approaching. Really? I mean, you really have to grab the reader early on. You can't expect him or her to just wade through a bunch of stuff that I already know, right? So, and then there's all this bold type, and I'm nothing against bold type per se. If you want to highlight, key phrases and calls to action and the rest of it, but there's just way too much of it here. And so everything stands out, and all I see is this massive text, and it really needs, I don't know, like a color block or bullet points or something to kind of break it up. There are some really nice kind of what you'll learn benefits over to the side, except again, they're kind of lost. There's no, or our art director likes to use the term visual hierarchy, right? So your eyes know where to go, and here there is none. So it's just everything looks the same, and it all gets sort of we'll get sort of lost in the fog. So, all right, let's go to the next one. We're in the home stretch. I think there's like 2 or 3 left. So Blue Jeans. So what's the offer? I have no idea. There's this picture about 2/3 of the way down with, I think it's a data sheet. I'm not sure. Nowhere in the copy does it tell me what this thing is. So, oh, and this is another one of my favorite copywriting cliches. As an IT leader, you want, again, you know, I hate to sound like a broken record, but you're telling me something I already know, right? So there's a download button at the end, but I don't know what I'm downloading. So always make your offer very specific, very concrete. I need to know what's going to happen when I click that button. And then just for good measure, a second call to action for something completely different. Speak to an expert at the end. So remember, one offer, one message, one call to action, keep it focused. Okay, let's go to the next one. Certify. So great pre-header copy. It says compare 17 of today's leading expense management software vendors. Find out why real system users rate Certify as the best. Download now. So hey, everything you need to know, that's all good. Everything that should be in the header is there. What the offer is, right? So it's a report. It's why I want it, how to get it. You got a great button. You got an image of the offer in the form of this graph, right? Now here's another salutation. Which again, I'd probably argue that you don't really need it. If you do use salutations, by the way, and that's, you know, it's no huge crime, but I would really suggest doing an A/B test. So, you know, test with and without and see if it makes a difference. And I would wager that you'll probably be better off without them. You know, here's the body copy here is generally really solid. There's no setup, which I love. You know, you get right into selling the offer. The only thing missing is a text link, which again, you know, we've talked about before. You always want to have at least one. Now, this may be more of a messaging issue, but I think this offer would be much more effective if you didn't tell the reader that it's going to tell him or her that Certify is, you know, rated #1. In other words, if you were to just sell this as a comparison between different vendors, that's one thing. But now that I know it's going to tell me why you're #1 and why you're the best, you know, now I'm not sure I really need it because its value is diminished. Now the other this is again probably on the level of a quibble, but it's not essential that your button copy be identical throughout the email, but it's important that it be consistent. So here you've got one button that says view the report and then another one that says get the report. And to me, that's ever so slightly confusing. You know, a minute ago you were telling me I could view it, and now you're telling me what I have to download it. And you want to avoid anything that distracts or maybe confuses the reader, even for a second. Okay. So I think we're getting to the last one, Josh. If you want to go to the next, here we go. So last but not least, Janrain. So they include pre-header copy, which is great, except it's not specific enough. It says download our white paper, and I'd like to know why, right? So what's in it for me? Here again, the topic, the headline rather, is a topic, right? So social content curation best practices, not a benefit, if you see the difference there. And again, a really long setup paragraph. I just think this is just, you know, Josh said at the outset here, this is the one thing that people do that just, and I don't know why, it just trips up emails. You don't want the reader to have to wade through this stuff. If you have to do it, I mean, I understand why people do it. It just has to be really short, like maybe a sentence or two. But beyond that, then there are learning benefits in bulleted form. They're not terribly strong. Again, they're really more topics, what's included in the report, rather than, you know, what's of value to me. One of them says why social content curation is an important business tool. And, you know, if you need to download the white paper in order to have you convince me that this is a topic worth caring about, you know, I don't know that I care. So, okay, next one. So that's it. Hey, wow. Let's all take a breath. So clearly you heard some key themes here that I've probably, you know, kind of drummed into you at this point. I just want to kind of summarize those real quickly. So number one, always keep your copy no longer than absolutely necessary and avoid redundancy. Always be thinking mobile. You know, most of your people, doesn't matter what your audience is these days, most people are reading these things on smartphones and mobile devices. So at the very least, be including things like call to action buttons and pre-header copy. Repeat the call to action multiple times in both button and text link. Just remember, if your images go away, your buttons disappear with them. Make your offer and your call to action clear, specific, and concrete. So make sure people know what they're getting. Keep your paragraphs short and also scannable. So button, bullet points are great, but I would say paragraphs, 1 or 2 sentences maximum. Don't take too much time to set up the offer. Don't tell me a bunch of stuff that I already know. And finally, again, don't tell me stuff that I know, because I'm just not going to read anymore. So, all right, Josh, I'm done.
Awesome. So we just went through 15 examples of B2B emails, and now I'm going to show you how you can automate that using AutoPilot. And many of the B2B emails that we went through included content downloads. So that is the example that I'm going to be showing you guys today. So here we are in AutoPilot. And one of the coolest things about this is, let's say you have your landing page where someone downloads your ebook or white paper, and that's what your email is pointing them to. You can actually just scan your page using a form right here. And as long as you have a tracking code on your page that AutoPilot provides you, you don't even have to put in any URL. You just scan the page itself, and boom, it's already hooked in. And then from here, you can actually just drag it. So I'm going to close that and show you how you can just drag it right over. And now you're sending an immediate email right after someone submits their email on that landing page. So someone requests the form and requests the ebook, and they get the immediate email afterwards, which is the report. So we have email autoresponder right here. It's like, hey, here's your copy, and super short, right to the point, gets them what they requested in just a matter of seconds. And then we add some delays in between emails, so we're effectively nurturing them right now. And we're not going to send back-to-back emails because we don't want to overload people, but what we're going to do is give them something that's relevant to what they opted in for. So what we do is we start sending them case studies. So we send them case studies such as, do you want high-performing marketers are focused on the customer journey? So if they downloaded an ebook that has to do with a customer journey, we're going to start showing them how you can be successful with customer journeys. So this way, they're getting content that's very relevant to what they want, rather than being on a standard newsletter. If they're on a standard newsletter, then they may be getting content about how to improve your content marketing skills when they just wanted to learn how to improve their customer journeys. And then from here, again, more delays, so we can continue nurturing them. And then we start sending even more case studies. And through this period, what ends up happening is, if someone does download a particular report, what we're able to do is just export them from a journey. And what does this mean? So to give you an idea, if someone downloads a report and they're already on your list, now you don't want them to get emails from 2 different places, right? You want them to get emails from just the list that they're on. For example, if someone purchases a product, you don't want them to still get free trial emails because they already purchased. So just using a simple ejection square, we can just eject them right from the journey that they should no longer be in once they download that piece of content or purchase your product. And this way, you have an effective nurture sequence that hits every touch point along the way, while making sure that nobody gets any duplicate content or too many emails going to them. And to set something up like this, it really is just as simple as drag and drop. So you see form submitted, it's just boom, just like that. And then that's the beautiful part about using AutoPilot, is that it is a visual journey. And you could just, you have the right hand down here where you just move back and forth. So this canvas is really up to you, and it's really made for creators. So if you are looking to set up a really great B2B email campaign with content downloads, or even getting people to join a webinar such as the one you're on right now, this is a great way to do it.
Hey Josh, if I can jump in real quick, quite aside from the fact that you guys make this really easy to set up here, I just want to say for the record also, what you're describing here in the journey that you've created is just a really good best practice. This sort of like immediate autoresponder type nurture program. In my experience, a lot of people think of nurturing, quote unquote, as sort of staying in touch with people over time and nurturing people in the database, and that's important. But this kind of immediate response to people at the point at which they're raising their hand and expressing interest is critical, even if you have a bunch of salespeople and BDRs calling these people once they've downloaded. I mean, it's just a really critical best practice in terms of making sure that you convert as many of those leads as possible into ultimately qualified leads and then customers. So anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think just like Howard said, you want to hit them when they raise their hand because their interest at that moment may not be the same interest that they have 2 days down the road, and especially a week down the road when they've already forgotten about you. So just keep that in mind. So what I want to do now is dive into questions. So we're just going to open this up here. Let me get back to this really quick. So this is for both of us and questions from the crowd. You didn't really talk too much about subject lines. Do you have any key tips or suggestions for what makes an effective subject line?
Can I take that one first?
Yeah. Do you say you want to take it first, or?
Yeah, I'll take it first. Yeah, I'll take it first, and then you can tell me if you agree.
Go for it.
So the old rule of thumb for subject lines used to be no more than 40 characters, but I think again nowadays with mobile, you're really better off keeping a subject line to 30 characters, or if it's longer than that, make sure that the first 30 characters make sense in and of themselves, i.e., stand alone. And otherwise, in terms of what you say in a subject line, I don't know how you feel, Josh, but to me, subject lines are really more art than science. They're just so few hard and fast rules. I mean, I can guarantee if I gave everyone a single rule about subject lines and what to say in them today, someone in the audience has broken that rule and been successful at it, right? So the one piece of advice I'd have, actually maybe two. One is test subject lines every time, because if you don't, and let's say your email doesn't work, you will never know whether the subject line was to blame. So always test a couple of subject lines. And the second is, I would suggest more times than not, include the offer in the subject line. So again, whether it's a webinar, demo, white paper, ebook, free coffee mug, whatever, include that at some level in the subject line. So I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think subject lines play a lot into branding. So you don't want to trick people into opening your email.
Agreed.
That's one of the things that I see become very common practice today, but just because it's common practice doesn't mean it's great for your brand. So if you say really in all caps with like an exclamation mark at the end, that's not going to get people to open your email the second time. Tell people what's in your email and get it to lead in. So you don't want to be surprised if downloading ebook. They should know that they're going to be downloading ebook before they even open your email. And I do think, similar to what you said, that subject lines should be shorter today, and that they should also play into the first sentence of your actual email copy. So that way it's a very easy flow, that everything feels streamlined to them. And that's one of the big things that I've seen many marketers miss out on, is that when people read, I mean, it's in a continuum. So nobody's like stopping. Yeah. They read the subject line and they read the first sentence of the email. And if you can make that sync very well, then you're right on point.
That's a great point. So there's no disconnect between the two.
So we're going to hop into another question. And so this question is there an ideal length in terms of word count for a B2B email?
Well, it's not 53 words. What was that? Wasn't that what you showed? That's for sure. Again, I hate to give something that's sort of too definitive, but if I were to look at the emails that we produce for clients these days, they're probably not much longer than that. I mean, I would say maybe 100 words, 150 at most. What do you think, Josh?
I think it really depends on the copy and the emails, because at the end of the day, it's about getting people to click through or respond. So as long as people are clicking through and responding, then you can have your emails as long as you want. Obviously, it is much harder to write longer form copy, and not everybody has a couple years of copywriting experience behind them. So in that case, it's better to stick with shorter emails, because that is what's going to get people to click through and respond. So that may be 100 to 200 words.
I'll tell you what I think is, we covered this in the examples, or I did. I think what's more important than copy length is what you're saying in the first like 25, 30% of your email. In other words, when someone first opens that email, if they can immediately know, okay, what's the offer? Why do these people want me to respond? What's the value in it for me? And what do they want me to do? The kind of the what was it? What, why, how that I mentioned earlier. If you can do that in the first, 50 words, it almost doesn't matter whether your entire email is, 53, 100, 200 words, because you're not then forcing people to scroll. And what you saw in a lot of the examples, or a few of them anyway, is, my goodness, you had to wade through all this stuff before you really even knew, what is it these people, want me to do? And that's more than anything, I think, what you want to avoid.
Yeah, I entirely agree. So let's hop into the next question, and that is, do you recommend gating information offers behind landing pages or giving the reader free access? And how do you decide which is best?
Well, I'll go first. I know there's a school of thought these days that says, you're better off not gating content and just giving, everyone unfettered access to everything. I'm really, and maybe it's because I'm an old school, direct marketing guy, but I'm much more of a proponent of gating content. Now, some content doesn't really lend itself to gating, so you're not really going to get someone to fill out a form to view a video or an infographic or something like that. But if you're offering information of value, like an analyst report or an ebook or a white paper, something like this, I see no problem putting that behind a registration form. Just make sure that form's really short, right? Like, maybe 4 or 5 fields at the most, shorter if better. But, it really, I guess it depends mostly on the content more than anything, what the offer is. I don't know how you feel.
I think it's fine to gate content as long as they know that you're providing value, and that tends to come with you offering free content at first with maybe a couple emails, so they can at least see like, wow, if this is his free content that he's offering, then the content that's gated must be 3x better. So being able to set them up for that. And I think in the marketing industry, they say it's the left hook, then you throw the right. And
I like
just basically,
that.
just giving a lot of value before you ask for any of their contact information. If you could do that well, then you can get a lot of opt-ins.
Good point.
Awesome. So it seems like we've come to the end of the webinar, and I just want to give a big thank you to Howard from Sparrow for joining us. This has been, and for everybody in the audience for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun, and we covered 15 emails in almost 15 minutes. And we've talked a little bit about automating nurture journeys and follow-up. So not only do you know the emails that you should be using, but also knowing how to implement them as well. So a huge thank you for everyone for joining, and we'll catch you on either the next webinar or sometime in the future. Cheers, guys.